That's our heartbeat this morning. Um, Paul did such a great intro. It's what we believe God wants to do for everyone today. And so I want to talk just briefly about blessing and honor. And when we were first invited, it was just, this is an awesome opportunity to bless and honor the past, the present, and the future. In Philippians 4:8 and 9, we read these words. And now, dear brothers and sisters, one final thing. Fix your thoughts on what is true and honorable and right and pure and lovely and admirable. Think about things that are excellent and worthy of praise. Keep putting into practice all that you learned and received from me, everything you heard from me and saw me doing. Then the God of peace will be with you. Paul's already done it, but we're going to honor again. Betty, can you stand this time? Where is Betty? Did she slip out? There we go. When we first talked with Betty, there was that sense of just that whole theme of it takes a community to raise our young people up. And there's those obvious transformations and life changes that happen through in high school. And then when we applaud, we're going to applaud one more time for Betty, because Betty knows that it takes a whole team to make this whole thing happen. So can we just do that on behalf of Betty and her whole team? Now I was told that the resident historian was Bob McEachran, and some of you may have had Bob as a teacher, and you'll have heard things like, how has a town with no river thrived? And Bob, when I met with him, is there anyone here that had Bob as a teacher? A couple. Yeah. And so Bob I encourage you to head back over to the railway station and get the whole history lesson. I went to chat with Bob, and I tell you, I can't really put into this message everything that he told me. But just some amazing highlights. I'll never look at that railway station bridge the same. Did you know that was built so that kids could go to school? Just this incredible kind of history that's in this town. And so for Bob, who I just see as a preserver of history, can we just applaud him and say thank you, Bob? Bob was also a fan of Effie Gray, for those of you that, one of the principals that kind of took this school from 5 teachers to 1,100 students. He had strange and wonderful ways of creating enthusiasm on his staff as he'd take the men out fishing and say, ladies, go ahead, teach the school. And they were glad to have him leave. Gave them some freedom and some joy. Now, another one, Paul. Isn't that a kind of funny thing? How many of you have seen someone from like 30 years ago or more this weekend? Yeah. It was just incredible for me. When Betty called me, I had no idea that Paul had become the principal here. And so there I get to meet this guy that 30 years ago. How many of us are nervous when we say 30 years ago? Right? 30 years ago, we were on a high school platform together doing drama. And so I was just so encouraged when I heard Paul, because he has this phrase where he says, if kids are engaged, they're better in school. This whole heartbeat to engage our youth, and that knowing that is a secret to them doing better in school. And so can we just applaud the entrepreneurial spirit that will make Norwell strong in the present and the future that Paul brings as a leader and principal of this school? Now my congregations, they're looking at me going, can he really do a 15-minute message? I know there's wine and cheese. I'm motivated. But we want to talk about blessing and honor. And there's 3 blessings that I just want to share today amongst us all. The first blessing is the blessing of who you are. Did you know that destinies are discovered in discovering who you are? Destinies are discovered when you discover who you are. And in tribute to Mother's Day, I'm going to turn to Psalm 139. And I'm starting at verse 13. And here the psalmist is declaring kind of what God saw as far as destinies go. He's talking about his relationship with God, and he said, "You made all the delicate inner parts of my body. You knit me together in my mother's womb. Thank you for making me so wonderfully complex." Will you just look at your neighbor and tell him, "I'm complex"? In the words of Shrek, I've got layers. Wonderfully complex. Your workmanship is marvelous. How well I know it. You watched me as I was being formed in utter seclusion, as I was woven together in the dark of the womb. You saw me before I was born, and every day of my life was recorded in your book. Every moment was laid out before a single day passed. How precious are your thoughts about me, O God. When we know that God is a good God, how precious are your thoughts. This is a God who loves you, cares for you, and has an identity for you, that when you discover your identity, you walk towards your destiny. How precious are your thoughts about me, O God. They cannot be numbered. I cannot even count them. They outnumber the grains of sand. And when I wake up, you are still with me. So if you'll kind of humor me for a moment, I'm going to be having some people stand up and down, or honorary people. But in honor of Mother's Day, here's my first one. If you have a mother, would you please stand? Everyone that's sitting will just, there's grace. So we just want to proclaim a blessing over every person here. God says you were knit together in your mother's womb. And so, God, we want to thank you, and we want to bless every person standing and sitting with the love and the identity of a creator God who fashioned us before time. And for that, we give you praise and thanks. You can sit down. Second influence, I just want to highlight the positive influence of teachers that teachers can have. Teachers have the potential to help students discover who they are and unlock their destinies. In John chapter 1, Jesus has this encounter with Simon. And in his first encounter with Simon, he meets him, he looks at him, and he says, "You're Cephas," which means rock. He gave Simon a nickname right off the top. How many of you got nicknames? Right off the top, Jesus, the teacher, sees this student, and he says, "You're the rock." And that nickname identified him, marked him, and helped shape his destiny. There's this wonderful thing about destinies. Paul had mentioned that there was a high school student, Mr. Johnson, at GCVI in Guelph. And believe it or not, he came to a church. I was in a church musical called Godspell. And after the church musical, they were in the middle of another play. And he came up to me and he said, "Hey, I got a part for you in the play." So I'd gone to no rehearsals, didn't do anything. I got 3 lines in a play and 3 nights in Toronto at a hotel as we went to this competition to fulfill this play. And the guy that I stole the lines from, we became great friends. It was a game changer. And so I went from Godspell, to Woody Allen's God, to Actor's Nightmare. Just sounds like things are getting better, doesn't it? But that propelled me into auditioning for Ryerson Theater School and going to Ryerson Theater School. That moment that a teacher had in a student's life was a game changer. And when you think of the number of students, I had Paul kind of give me the numbers, and when they averaged it out, did you know that over 46,575 students have passed through these halls? I just want to highlight that. That's huge. That is a wonderful amount of influence. Again, 46,575 over the last 75 years. Are there any teachers in the house? Can you stand? One. Come on, be brave. Teachers, keep standing, keep standing. Can we just applaud the teachers? Jesus said one of the neat things, the third blessing. So that's the second blessing, which is just we just want to bless and honor the teachers that over the past 75 years have had the potential to have a significant impact on the students that have walked through these halls. And then the third blessing, John 16, verse 7, we hear Jesus say, "It's to your advantage that I go away." When I was a young student, I had a neighbor who was a philosophy professor at the University of Guelph, and I'd go over to his house at night, and we'd kill a bottle, and he'd teach me things. And one of the things that he had said was, it's the teacher's job to become superfluous. That was a big word for a 17-year-old. It's the teacher's job to become superfluous. In many ways, the student gets it when they can take what the teacher taught them to the next level, and they don't need the teacher to do it. Jesus put it this way in John 14:12, "I tell you the truth, anyone who believes in me will do the things I do, even greater things." Will you say that with me? Even greater things. Jesus' whole goal of teaching was to release his students to take the goodness of God into every sphere of creation. It was always Jesus' plan that his students go into the arena of life and transform the world with the goodness of God. And so, I'm going to get you all to stand again, all of you. Can we just stand as representative of students that have walked through these halls, whether we've walked through them or not? And on the count of three, we're just going to do a royal declaration, if you will, with me. Just like the gingerbread man. On the count of three, we're going to say, "God bless everyone." Can we do that? 1, 2, 3. God bless everyone. And let's applaud. And so, God, we want to thank you for the 46,575 students that have walked these halls. We want to thank you for the influence and the positive impact that teachers can have on students. We want to thank you for the community that is built and is being built and will continue to be built. God, we want to thank you for the entrepreneurial spirit that just is taking creative things one step further and another step further so that your goodness can be continued to grow and communities continue to thrive. While you're still standing, there was a beautiful moment. Some of you may have seen the movie Facing the Giants, but a football team. I like this particular picture if you can see it. Did you know, like Redmond, how they got the name Redmond? It was from red sweaters that the teams wore. And so here we have this football moment. And in the movie, there's this one clip. And there was a high school teacher who was at a high school football team. And this one teacher, every morning before school started, would walk the halls and just pass by every single locker and ask God's blessing upon every single locker that represented every child that would ever come to this school. And so I'd encourage my folk before you leave, and I encourage all of you here, just to walk these halls with a prayerful heart, that God's glory would fill these halls and that people would discover who they are. And as they discover who they are, that their destinies, God destinies, would be fulfilled. All the people said, Amen.